Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Hey, Rob, welcome to the show. As way getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Brian, super happy to be on your show. I love your walk and talks. They are so funny.
Yeah.
So I'm a geek that got into sales a few years ago, and I'm working a lot with artificial intelligence to try to understand what really is going on when someone is trying to sell and someone is figuring out if they should buy or not.
And how'd you get interested in this?
Well, I was lucky. I was the CEO of a very fast-growing startup, and we went from 2 to 100 salespeople in 3 years.
Wow.
So that was exciting. And in my, geek brain, I thought that we would get 50 times as much sales when we had that size, and that did not happen. And I set out to try to understand what was it that caused that, and essentially applied my background, which is technology, data analysis, and now also artificial intelligence to those problems.
And what did you figure out?
A lot.
Yeah, well, spill it. Come on, don't keep us in suspense.
Okay, well, let's start with something that I always ask, like sales leaders like yourself. What's the most important trait of a salesperson?
The number one thing that I found is the outward mindset, the ability to empathize, be interested and curious in the other person.
Okay, so communication skills, engagement ability. That's what I call that, right? Like ability to connect with someone.
Right, but communication is bi-directional, right? So it's not just talking, it's listening. Because if you don't understand what's going on in the other person's head, whatever comes out of your mouth may be irrelevant.
Right, exactly. But then I always ask, well, what about understanding the product and the industry?
That's important, of course.
Right.
Yeah, you got to know the
product.
And then
I say, well, what about working hard? Like not just giving up, but just grinding it out a little bit. Isn't that important?
Yep, that's very important.
And then I say, well, what about the killer instinct?
The competitiveness.
You don't have the killer instinct to actually close a deal. You just talk, and you become
You're
friends.
not in service.
Right. So my point with these what about is that all of these things are important. And oftentimes when we have analyzed the data, struggling salespeople are missing one of those key ingredients. And what happens is essentially that these attributes, they don't add up, they multiply. So if you are close to 0 in one of them, guess what? You're not doing much, because if you multiply by 0, you get 0. And so that's really like the essence of what I found when I spent, analyzing millions of sales transactions.
And how can you tell those things? How do you, like hard work, activity?
How do you tell them? You're a smart guy. You know who's a good communicator. You know who has the ability to empathize. How do you do that?
I'd have to talk with them or listen to their calls.
Exactly. So you use your brain to do that. Well, today we have a brain that is artificial. It's called artificial intelligence. It's not as smart as Brian. It's not as smart as Rob.
Don't be silly.
You're getting close to Rob, but
we're centuries away from that.
It's not as smart as you. But what it does allow you to do is that it allows you to go all over the place all the time and check in. How good are these emails? How good are these sales conversations? What's the status of this lead versus that lead? Is this deal about to close, or is it about to go radio silent? That's the type of stuff that we can measure, and then we can bring that into these algorithms and then to tease out all the different factors so that all of a sudden we understand that this guy, great communicator, not hard worker. This guy, she knows how to close, but she has gotten a bad territory. This girl here, she has it all, and that's why she's bringing in, 3 times as much as everybody else, right?
And what data set are you using? The CRM?
Yeah, yeah, and we enhance it a little bit because as we all know, I was writing a little skit. Like I got inspired by your jokes, and I was writing a little skit today, and I said something about data hygiene. You know what data hygiene is, and it's like, no, it's like how good your CRM data is. And it's like if we had a health inspector come into our database, it would be condemned for forever. But the point of bad data is that it's bad in a consistent way. There are some reps that are not putting in their activities. There are a lot of duplicate definitions. There are, of course, missing information in some cases and so forth. And once you understand those patterns, you can fill in the blanks. Again, thinking about you as a human brain, right? You can figure out, even if there are a couple of words missing in a sentence, you can still figure out what that sentence probably says. Yeah. Especially if you have the context around it. AI can help you do the same thing. And that's how we get around the fact that everybody has bad CRM data.
And how about the actual conversations? Have you gone that far as like?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. And there, in the last couple of years, a field called natural language processing, or NLP, has just gone leaps and bounds. So what we can do, and I don't want to get too different, we use something called transfer learning. So we can essentially take general context about written words and transcripts and so forth, but that has nothing to do with sales. And we can load that into these things. There used to be that only Google and Facebook and all of these huge companies could do this type of stuff. But today, there's new technology that's come out in the last couple of years that allows us to do the same thing. And then we take that data that is like 85, 90% understanding. And then we take it to your specific sales conversations, and we label up. That's an AI term. We say, this is a good conversation. This one, had these terms, etc. And then with that information, we can extract out all of those important pieces that are happening in a sales conversation. Did you talk about price? Did you talk about, commitment dates? Did you talk about objections? Is there some kind of other stakeholder that we need to have part of the conversation? And then we can tease out that. And of course, it's not always 100%. AI does not work like that. Just like you may not always hear exactly if you're listening to a conversation. But if you have enough, you can make inferences of it.
Right, because I've played around with those products and I find near zero value because I loaded up all my interviews into them, right? And it told me almost nothing. And it obviously made sense to me because the people writing the program never sold. So they don't know what to look for and what a good sales call is and a bad sales call is. They're correlating it to the CRM, which is near 100% fiction. Right? Ask any sales manager the last day of the quarter.
Right. No, there's a lot of fiction. Like that's another thing, right? Like there's a lot of fiction in CRM, and I know one of the things that you always talk about is that fake pipeline, right?
Well, there's laws of nature here. There's Goodhart's law, where you ask for something, you're going to get it, whether it's real or
exactly.
not. Yeah.
You get what you incentivize, and if you're incentivized 3 times pipeline coverage, you get 3 times pipeline coverage.
Right.
And you, again, as a really smart human, sales leader, go in there and see this is all BS, right? This pipeline, but how do you do that? There are rules to your brain, how it's going through that process. And it sees, well, there hasn't been any meaningful conversations in the last 30 days. You're talking to someone that is a junior intern, and you should really be talking to, someone in the at least senior executive level, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of different things that are there. If you have that part of the information, then all of a sudden that fiction becomes essentially like it's either materialized as, yes, this is a real deal. It probably will close by the end of the quarter, or this is all fluff that someone has put in just to please a sales leader or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think what's happened in sales is everyone's focused on reducing the cost of sales instead of increasing the top line of sales,
Right.
which is exactly the opposite of what you want,
Right.
right?
And that's funny that you're saying that, right? Because that's where I came from. Again, my background, although I was always involved in sales and I've done a lot of deals and so forth, it was never to lead the sales team. And I said sales productivity, because essentially that's what the definition of productivity is: output per unit worked, and unit worked is the cost of the rep, so to speak, right? And when I spoke to a sales leader about sales productivity, they were just thinking about whether, you could shorten some keystrokes or something on the computer. I realized that it did not resonate with them. It resonates with the economists, the finance people, the CEO, the board, but it did not resonate with sales.
They look at productivity as number of demos, proposals per week. And those things have an inverse correlation with the results.
Right. Exactly. So what I started to do instead was to say, hey, how much can a rep generate with what he or she is given? And that's the real thing. So if you're given a great territory, and we say that value of that territory is $300,000 for a year, if you can generate $1 million out of that, you're doing awesome. You're getting a great territory and you generate $350,000 of sales. That's not really the things. So how do you measure the value of a territory? And it's all, again, the patterns, right? The patterns of how much have they bought in the past, what type of firms are in that territory, how many firms are there that could do that, and so forth. And again, everybody's struggling with limited data and poor data and all that stuff. But today, especially, and I know you're targeting a lot of those people that are out in San Francisco, the modern sales organizations today, they know that data is the key to their success, and they are doing more and more. Yes, it's still messed up. It's still, all of these holes, and they have a bunch of technology tools in their stack that are not adding that much value, but they are getting much better data. And with that data, we're starting to see those patterns that I'm talking about.
And so you've nailed down 4 key things. Is that how you view the world?
Yeah. In terms of the skills, or in terms of, like I think with work ethic or effort, closing ability and all the things that come into that, how you go about getting a close down, product and industry understanding, whether you can do meaningful discovery. If you don't understand the customer's problem, you're probably not going to be very successful selling a solution that's solving, right?
Yeah.
And then engagement ability. Those are the skills and behaviors that we like to measure. And then the other aspect of it is, what have you been given? What leads have you been given? So if you get a little bit of leads, you have to do a lot more to get a lot of sales. If you're getting amazing, there are always, in sales organizations around the country right now, there are guys that are just picking up the phone and taking an order, and they're the top performers.
Yeah.
Right. And then there are other people that are coming out, are super hungry, and they're essentially generating their own business from scratch. They don't even get leads. They're going out there, researching and doing that, and generates, and then they look at the 2 numbers, and the guy that picks up the phone, he's selling 3 times as much, but is he 3 times better? The answer is oftentimes not, right?
Is the goal for this to help the manager coach the rep, or for
Yeah, absolutely. So most tools out there today are always about, what can rep do? And there are a million things that you as a rep can do. But a lot of times it becomes good suggestions, like good ideas. It would be a good idea to call this guy. It would be a good idea to call that guy, etc. Right? And there's only so many good ideas that you can act on in a day. So what we want to do is to understand the entirety of the sales environment. How much value is coming in from marketing? If you have an SDR team, again, talking about the quality of a pipeline. An SDR team is supposed to generate qualified pipeline. But we see all the time that the SDR team is compensated by generating number of pipeline deals or the amount of pipeline deals and not the quality of it, right? And then, of course, you have the same principle. So that's the value coming in. And then it is about what can you as an AE, like a great rep, do to increase that value and get deals done at the end of the month for the end of the quarter.
And what are you seeing most companies do wrong when you go in?
I think first and foremost, everybody we talk to, 100% of them say, I don't trust my data. I have a bunch of stuff, but I don't trust it. So that's always ground zero. Like let's establish a ground truth. And a lot of it comes into, well, we just changed our sales process. We used to do lead-based things, but now we're doing ABM. Yeah. Oh, except that 3 people are still doing the leads, and
all the money's in the leads,
and they right. It's always the same story, right? So that's number one. Step number 2 is they don't do meaningful one-on-ones. Some reps, some managers feel like a one-on-one is essentially a gripe session for the rep, or that they have to, put themselves into an uncomfortable situation where they just, I'm going to fire you in 3 months or less, right? And I don't think that the one-on-one should be either of those two things. If there are legitimate reasons why the rep is not able to do their thing, and typically those are enablement things, like there is some crazy contracting process that just takes 3 weeks instead of 2 days, or if there is just absolutely imbalance in the lead territories or whatever you have, right? Those should surface, and we help people surface that. But then it's always about, why are you right now just short of quota? What is the one thing that you could do right now that would change that? Or if you're just ramping up, what is it that you need to get started with? What is it like that I need to see? And there, of course, a lot of it is about, can you build a pipeline that you can then sell in the next quarter and so forth? Or is it like that top performer where you're trying to understand how much of that top performer's production is just automatic because they keep getting these renewals or getting these expansion sales, and how much of it is based on them actually going out there and opening up new business for you, right? So in each case, you have a slightly different conversation, but you are operating on facts instead of, hunches, and you don't have to get into these, you don't understand my situation, X, Y, Z, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
Right, but then the question is, are you relying on the right facts? Right.
Well, there are a few things in sales that is always right. So everybody says like the CRM database is this wasteland of bad data, but there are always a few things that are right. And one of those things that are right is the actual closed deals, because usually that's what generates the commission report.
Well, that's a fact.
Right.
Right. But then you could reverse engineer it, because there are easier deals than others, right?
No, exactly. But what I'm saying is that you start with, hey, what can I trust in the CRM data? Yeah. And the closed won deals are always correct.
Right.
Then you work backwards. what activities, et cetera, did you see for those things? And then you have this guy, Bob, that is, has like his last activity was a martini lunch in 2008 that he put into the CRM, right? And since then, there's absolutely nothing. Well, for him, we don't know whether he's, making the 100 calls a day or whatever, but might be still making his numbers. He's lasted for 12 years, right? And then you have some other people where you do have great data. And for most modern sales organizations today, they use tools like SalesLoft or Outreach or inbox capture and so forth. So all of a sudden, the percentage of actual activities and stuff like that get captured are much, much higher than in the past. They do calendar syncs and so forth. So all of a sudden you have much more data. And that allows us to kind of infer these things that you're talking about. And then going back to, was this a good deal or a bad deal, right? Like, was this an easy to close deal or a hard to close deal? And that's all what we in the AI world call regression analysis. Like, it's essentially to make a prediction of whether something's going to happen or not. Yeah, go
I got
ahead.
to imagine that these engagements are probably, there's a lot of consulting in it, because if they don't do it right, they don't get the right result and they blame you.
Well, what we do is to try, and we've been at this for a long time, is to always try to explain our AI. Because that's the thing. If you just say, this is going to happen, and you don't explain it, then people will say, oh, this is science fiction. This is not something that you can rely on. So we basically came up with this concept we call peek inside. And peek inside allows you to peek inside that black box and see what is it that made this deal a good deal. And that could be, well, it's in the right industry, it's in with the right level of seniority. You actually reached out to the other stakeholders are needed. The prospecting that happened on it, the deal qualification that happened before had these types of touchstones. There were not just a single email, but there were multiple things that happened. And when they are communicating back with you, they are like when you're sending them an email, they're responding back. I mean, that's just a telltale sign, right? If you have to send 100 emails to get a response back, perhaps they're not that interested.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same as if you're trying to ask a girl out on a date, right? If she responds right away, that's a sign that if you text her and she texts back, right, that's a sign that she might be interested. If she puts you on hold for 2 weeks,
those are things
maybe not, right?
Yeah, what I call acid tests in sales.
Right.
Right. Do you have the next meeting set? Did they show up for the call? Were they late?
Exactly.
Do they answer your question, or they just ignore it, or give you a yes, no, maybe? The engagement level.
Right. So again, I'm not making statements that we can figure this stuff out for every single instance all the time. But what we can do is
what I do like about it is that is the user teaching the AI? Meaning
well, AI by definition, and again, we don't have to turn this into a technical lecture, but well, machine learning.
Yeah.
But you hear from the name, it is the machine learning, and what it learns from is the data patterns that happened in the past. And the way it works in sales is that there are some things that are, universal. Every single time you're trying to understand how a lead comes in, and maybe it says website, or it says Google, or it says SEO, or it says search engine, we can understand that those are all web-based, leads where someone did an online search for your product and then came to your website. So that's universal for all customers. Then there are other things that are more specific, like exactly how a deal moves through your pipeline, and points where it could get stuck, and special, maybe you have a very complicated contracting process or something like that a lot of people fall out of. And those we have to learn from your data. But in today's world, it is possible to kind of discern the general patterns, and then, as I said, using something like transfer learning to apply your team's, your company's specific patterns on top of that. And then you get the best of both worlds. You get the general sense of how deals flow, plus your specific things. So we learn, and we never start with cold. We always start with, we cannot do this stuff for companies that started yesterday and they have one salesperson.
Right.
But if you have 10 reps and if you have 1 year's worth of data, there's enough patterns to do it. And if you have 3 years data and 30 reps, there's even more to work on.
And how about as far as the mix of those elements? Certainly selling different products in different markets, that the mix of those is very different.
Right.
And who you're selling to. If you're selling to an engineer, product knowledge is very important.
Exactly. And it goes back to this whole thing that some of the things, we call them models, they have to be company specific, because if you're selling a highly technical product, yes, all your reps need to be able to have that product knowledge to talk to those engineers. In other cases, it may be super transactional, and all that matters is speed to get on the phone and having a great energy when you engage with the customer. And that's the thing. And it doesn't matter. The system will learn from that, from your past success, and see, these are the people that are very successful, these are the people that are in the middle, and these people are the ones that are struggling. And then you can help the people that are struggling in many cases, not always. In some cases, it's nothing to do. It's very hard to fix someone that has poor work ethic, for example. But there are many things that you can ramp up on, right?
Right, because sales is a very weird profession, meaning that nobody went to college for sales. They're in sales. I always say because they're either money motivated or they can't do anything else.
Right.
So you hope they're money motivated.
Well, or they are just great like you to connect with people. Like, I mean, every single time I watch one of your
right, but that's a learned skill.
I feel like, wow, this guy. I mean, today is our first day that we met, but like I kind of already feel like I know you, and that's one of the core strengths that you provide, right?
Right, but that's a learned skill. And people say, oh, you're born with it or you're not. And I tell people, I was voted shyest of my high school class.
Yeah.
In the bottom 5%. Okay. So,
well,
and I got to believe,
then that gives us hope for everybody, right?
It does. that's how I put myself out there. Look, if I can make a living, what's wrong? What's your issue?
No. Well, I was also an introvert, and then I grew up in Sweden, and I was the typical Swede, and then I went to America. And now I've been working. We have an office in Spain, and people here say, they've been making the ABBA jokes and the Viking jokes and all that stuff in America for the last 20 years, and they say, "You're so American. I don't understand." I'm like, for 20 years I was a foreigner in the U.S., and now I'm a foreigner back in Europe again. So. You do adapt to the environment you're in. You are able to do that to learn new skills and fit in, right? And that again proves kind of like the point that we're trying to make, that if you're a sales leader and you have a team, it's not like that's a fixed thing that you cannot affect. Right. It's very hard to make changes if it is just loosey-goosey, or make more calls, or just be more engaging on the phone, and like those are just general ideas. What we want to do is to hone in and give very specific feedback for each person, and always time put people a little bit outside the comfort zone.
Right, I agree with that completely. And what I like about this is not just one thing; it's kind of the whole picture.
Right. Well, if you're already great, like if you're already great at something, don't work more on that. Work on the thing that like sometimes, if you, like for example, if you're always great engaged in, but you're always 2 minutes late on the calls, that's your weakness. That's the thing that like sets off the thing. So now you have to work 5 minutes to work yourself back up. And again, like this is again. You said you looked at some of these tools, and sometimes the tools, they become very simplistic. For example, I saw one company that said, if you apologize on a sales call, you're losing. So the idea was, don't apologize.
Right. And I look at their stuff and I'm like, you guys know nothing about sales.
Right. Because when do you apologize on a thing? When something has already gone wrong, that probably changed it. They changed the overall outcome, and what you should be working on is not to not apologize if it's appropriate, because of course you're a human being, and people will accept an apology if it's hard.
Right, and making a blanket statement. But if it's always
wrong for some other reason, like you're always late, then change that instead, right?
Well, this is it, because when you put non-sales people analyzing and publishing stuff about sales, it's not correlation, or it's correlation, not causation. Right.
Well, exactly. And again, it is always about trying to understand it. I'm lucky to be surrounded by people that are much, much more experienced in sales than I am personally.
It's also,
but what I can do is to take the technical aspect of it and translate it into something that
right, because sales is a performance, and in the same way, like when you see the gymnastics or the divers and the judges hold up a number, most of the time the numbers are different. And why is that? Because it's a performance and it's interpreted differently by everyone.
Right. But there's still someone that wins, right?
Of course.
Right.
But why was Godfather 3 a terrible movie?
After Godfather 2 was so great?
Got 1 and 2, arguably the 2 best movies ever made.
Right.
Same cast, same writer, same director.
Well, sometimes it's hard to,
Performance, right?
get lightning in a bottle, so many
Yeah.
times, right? But the way, and maybe that's where you and I are a little different, because I say, sure, we can have a terrible day and your performance is off. And I'm sure you have had one of those days in your sales career where like nothing goes right? One, okay. but if you have one of those days and then you have 99 good ones, you're going to be awesome.
Right. And I agree. At
But
the
if you have
level, you need
25% of the days like that,
yeah.
That's a huge difference, right?
Right.
And that's where the math brain comes back and thinks about it, right?
Yeah, because today I think managers are looking at pure quantity of activity and results. So if the results are there, they forgive the activity. If the results aren't there, they push the activity.
Right. Well, if you have nothing else to do, like I read a sales book that says, look at results. If the results are not good, look at pipeline. If the pipeline is not good, look at activities, right? But that's what sales management has been for the last.
That is somebody who doesn't understand sales.
Well,
what you look at is skill. If
right.
the skill is there, then they're not applying the skill.
Right. Well, in some cases, they haven't gotten the opportunity to apply the skill.
Then they have to have the opportunity.
If they got a really crappy territory.
Right.
But in most cases, the skill is not a thing. It's a combination of multiple things, right? And then there is something somewhere that is going wrong. And it might be, as we talked about before, you're talking to engineers and they feel like they're wasting their time.
Right. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Or it may be that you are talking to their finance department to buy this new finance software, but you're not making it urgent for them to.
Right.
You don't put any kind of quote unquote closing pressure or whatever you call it. You just talking. The quarter comes and the quarter goes, and then you're going into the next one. So that's the closing skills. You haven't gotten them to do the commit. Or it may be that you're just hoping that one or two of these deals that you worked on, and you're not putting the effort in to open up 15 other deals, right? And then it's more around the effort. So in each case there are, and then you can break it down, of course, even further and further. And we're always working on like digging down one step further and so forth. But these are the holistic aspects that we're looking at.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to follow you and learn more about your company?
Yeah, I love to connect on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's Robert Cal. In both cases, it's IN Robert Cal. And if you go to our company, it's cein.ai, CEIN.ai.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.